Preparing for a triathlon, especially your first triathlon, is an incredibly rewarding experience. Notice that I said preparing for a triathlon, not completing one. They're different things. The differences in your appearance, your physical capabilities, the way that you feel about yourself, the way that you view yourself, and just the way that you feel in general. All of those trended up for me over time. Not every day. You're gonna have bad days. But over weeks and months, the time it takes to get ready for a triathlon anyway, all of these things trended up for me. Just a quick note before we start, I am not a coach, a trainer, or a nutritionist. I have no education in this area. I'm just a guy who trained for a triathlon for 6 months and then completed it. Everything in this episode is just my personal experience, what worked and didn't work for me. If you're thinking about taking something like this on, or any new workout or diet regimen, good idea to check with your doctor first, just to make sure that you're okay. That said, we're going to go over the 3 pillars of my preparation for my first triathlon. That is training, nutrition, and recovery. Then there's the gear, and we're going to talk about the gear. But first, a word on fatigue. The reason that I wanted to knock out a couple of basic concepts about fatigue in the first place is because the other 3 legs of this stool that we're going to talk about, training, nutrition, and recovery, all relate to fatigue and fatigue management in some way. So it's useful to understand fatigue and the different types of fatigue before trying to put together a good training, nutrition, or recovery program. If you Google it, if you jump online, there's a few different models. There's a few different ways that exercise scientists and everybody likes to think about fatigue. The one that I found most useful for this process was actually the most basic one. In this model, there are 2 types of fatigue. There is CNS fatigue, or central nervous system fatigue, and then peripheral fatigue. CNS fatigue refers specifically to the fatigue that your brain and your central nervous system, your brain's a part of your central nervous system, that your central nervous system goes through when you start training and recovering from that training. The science behind it generally concerns itself with stuff like neurotransmitters and stress hormones and things like that. But the analogy that was helpful for me is it's the operating system, the infrastructure that holds everything else up about your training and performance. Some symptoms of CNS fatigue are going to be that you feel tired even if you've slept pretty well. You feel mentally foggy. You might be irritable or in some way, shape, or form find it difficult to regulate your mood. And in general, just a feeling of being cooked. Like nothing specifically hurts, but like your hair is tired. Like everything about you is tired. That generally is indicating that you're going through some sort of CNS fatigue. Peripheral fatigue is a little bit different. Peripheral fatigue is the fatigue that all weightlifters and most athletes are most familiar with. That is, I've worked a muscle to the point of exhaustion. That muscle is now sore for 2 or 3 days after that. That's peripheral fatigue. So I do a bunch of curls, my biceps hurt. I do a bunch of bench pressing and my pecs hurt. I do a bunch of squats and my... You do a bunch of Kegels and it's the old that gets really tired. Such a child. Symptoms of peripheral fatigue are going to be very straightforward. It's muscle soreness. You've worked a muscle and that muscle is now sore. This is not just a case, by the way, of no pain, no gain, and that you should be somehow soldiering through this. There's an amount of muscle soreness that is appropriate and totally okay to train with. Then there's too sore. If a muscle is too weak to do what it's supposed to do, or if it's too sore such that you can't make it do what you need it to do, you can put your joints into very vulnerable situations. So a situation where your muscle would be stabilizing your joint, it's not doing that job anymore. It can also make you train with bad form. You run sloppy or things like that. That puts you at even further risk of injury. So it's important that you start to figure out what is sore, but I can train through it and train well, and what's too sore, and it's better if I take a day off or just do some zone 2. And even if you do push through it, a lack of recovery when you have muscle soreness that's like a little too much is going to lead to suboptimal training and ultimately suboptimal results because you're not training as hard or as well as you should. So there isn't even really that much benefit to training through too much soreness. And it's going to be up to you to really track that data and make sure that you're training well and figuring out what is too sore for you. But enough about that. All right, this is the part where people are going to get frustrated with me because I'm going to get like a little bit specific about the training that I did, but not like too specific. I'm not going to tell you what you should do on Mondays at 6 a.m. That isn't how I'm going to go about this, but I will kind of explain the concepts behind the training that I did. It really just boiled down to 3 modes of training or 3 types of training that I would do over the course of 6 months while getting ready for the triathlon. They were endurance training, performance training, and then strength training. So the endurance training is more like the grind. The goal behind endurance training is to make sure that I can put in a high enough level of effort over a long enough period of time. So this is about volume. This is about getting the engine up to par. So this is heart, lungs, and just my ability to mobilize this energy and apply this energy at a predictable, sustainable level for, say, 2 hours at a time. So this is more truly about endurance rather than about how fast can I go. So this is where I'm trying to improve the engine. And initially, I would do like long untimed runs. They didn't really scratch the itch actually for what I needed to do. And I ended up focusing just on zone 2 for my endurance training. And when I say zone 2 training, I mean zone 2 on the stationary bike or my bike on a trainer indoors. That way I had a lot of control over my heart rate, which was a good way to measure my level of effort, and I could stop whenever I wanted to without having to walk my bike home. I end up using the terms zone 2 and endurance training interchangeably, and frankly, most times I just call it zone 2. But when I say zone 2, I'm referring to on the bike, on the trainer, inside. The second mode of training or type of training was performance training, right? So this is training my muscles and getting my technique to the point where I can do the thing I'm trying to do faster and more intensely. So timing a run to make sure that my time is improving. I'm running harder and faster over the course of a predictable distance. Timed bike rides, timed swims. This is where I was really starting to measure my performance, my technique. How good am I at this? So while endurance training was trying to address the question of how long can I put in a sufficiently high level of effort without having to stop over a given period of time, performance training is addressing how hard or fast can I do this task such that I am done with a certain distance within a certain period of time. So one is about endurance and the other was about intensity. And they both factor into what your final performance and your final time is going to be on race day. The third mode of training that I started with and ended up dropping was strength training. So as I said in one of the monthly recap videos, I'm 42. I was planning over the course of 6 months to lose a decent amount of weight, and I wanted the minimum amount as possible of that weight to be muscle mass. It's hard to put it back on. So I worked some strength training into my early training cadence, but it almost immediately started to interfere with my swimming training. My back and arms would be so sore after doing a bunch of pull-ups and push-ups that it would affect my form while I was swimming. But on top of that, I was also feeling a decent amount of central nervous system fatigue. I was feeling a lot of systemic fatigue and lifting weights and then doing these long cardio sessions. For me, it was just too much. For you, it might be different, but for me, I was throwing the baby out with the bathwater a little bit. In trying to preserve muscle, I was training so hard that it was affecting my ability to perform the task that I was actually trying to achieve, which was to get through the triathlon. So I ended up ditching strength training and just replacing that in my training cadence with more swim training, which made me sore enough. And while I did lose a decent amount of strength and a decent amount of muscle mass, which is a bummer, ultimately I think it was the right decision. As far as when I performed these different types of training, for me, it was easier to do my endurance training in the morning, so my zone 2, or maybe if I was going to do a long untimed run, I'd wake up early, do those first thing. That was easier for me. My road training, same thing. If I was going to take a timed run, I would do that run in the morning. In both cases, fasted, by the way. That's not important. If you don't feel good working out fasted, don't. Eat something before you work. There's nothing magical about working out fasted. For me, I felt better doing longer, slower cardio stuff in a fasted state. That won't be true for everybody. As far as swimming or strength training, that's not an option. I can't do strength training, pull-ups, weights, or even swimming. I really thought I could do swimming fasted, and I was incorrect. So before those, I had to eat. So on days that I was doing that, I would have a late lunch, wait an hour or two, and then as soon as work was over, do the swim or the lifting. On days where I had to swim in the morning, I would just wake up earlier and eat something small before hitting the water. But I swam a couple of times fasted. No bueno, that was not gonna work for me. So what that ended up meaning for me was endurance training or performance training, so bike rides and runs, in the morning, fasted, that worked out great. Strength, swimming, later in the day, so that I could eat and still keep my eating window pretty small. So as I said, I'm not gonna give you a like Monday at this time do this, Tuesday at this time do that. Everybody's schedule is different, and everybody's capacity to recover from training is gonna be different, and life gets in the way, so that wouldn't quite be as useful, I think, as just kind of explaining the concept of how I would plan out my training for a week, and that might give you a hint as to how you can start putting those puzzle pieces together yourself. In this example, we can see here that on Monday I did 60 minutes of zone 2 training, so that would be first thing in the morning. I'd wake up and do an hour on the bike. The next day I would get up early and run a fast 5K. So in this case, I knew that my training run was going to be 5K for the entire project. So it took me 26:36 to do that run. Now I never did road training back-to-back 2 days in a row. So I never did a fast 5K and then do a timed bike ride. I would never do a timed swim and then go for a run the next day that I was going to be timing. When I was doing those intense sort of road training workouts, I would need a day to recover in between if I was going to do a good job on the next one. So on my schedule, on my data sheet, you'll always see at least a day in between. The exception to this is zone 2. I found zone 2 to be a really useful active recovery method. It didn't seem to bother either my leg muscles peripherally or my central nervous system from a CNS standpoint. So you can see here that on Wednesday, I went ahead and did half an hour of zone 2 beforehand. The reason that that would be a shorter session is because I had a bike ride planned for the next day. I wanted to be careful of my legs. So you're not just managing fatigue, you could be managing a couple of different types of fatigue. In this case, I knew that from a CNS standpoint, I'd feel fine doing 30 minutes on the bike, but if I go over 60 minutes, I'm getting into some peripheral fatigue and my leg muscles and stuff like that. So 30 minutes was good, still counts as training, counts as active recovery. And the next day I was able to do a long bike ride, 12 and a half miles or 20 kilometers. And it took me 54, 56, which is way too long. Now Friday is interesting. I took Friday all the way off in this example here, as you can see. And the reason for that was because A, I'd had a long, relatively intense bike ride the day before, and the day after, on Saturday, I was planning a timed swim. Now, you want your performance sessions to be really intense, you want to try really hard, and swimming was very, very hard for me. So I knew I was going to need to have a lot in the tank on Saturday morning when I went for that swim. So I took Friday completely all the way off. I ate a couple of extra calories, I went to bed early, really trying to do like recovery stuff, you know. So it's dusty out here. Took Friday all the way off. Just focused on recovery on Friday because I knew Saturday morning was going to be intense. Then on Sunday, with the swim on Saturday behind me, even though I was still a little bit sore and I was still a little bit tired, that was Saturday morning. And so as long as I got to bed on time Saturday, I was good to go to do another 60 minutes of zone 2 training on Sunday. So what this resulted in over the course of a week is 2.5 hours in zone 2 on the bike, a fast 5K training run, a fast bike run, and a fast swim. So this was actually a pretty tidy week, a pretty neat week. Now, you wouldn't want to do this exact thing over and over and over again. There's going to be variations. You're going to miss a day here, you're going to be too tired there. There's going to be reasons that this exact weekly schedule isn't going to work for you, but it's an example of kind of how I would look at it. So I would look at the past few days and see what I had sort of missed, like what was lagging behind. I would also take stock of how I was feeling and plug in a workout that made the most sense. If I felt a little bit tired, a swim's not going to work tomorrow morning, but I might be able to get away with a fast 5K. If I'm feeling really cooked altogether, maybe I just take the day off altogether. So you are going to have to sort of manage it yourself. You're going to have to look at your data that you're collecting and take stock of how you feel. This is a three-legged stool. Okay, so if you are training and you're not putting together a strategy to feed yourself and recover from that training, if you somehow manage to avoid injury, your results are going to be disappointing anyway. So even if you're the kind of hardo who's like, I don't need to sleep 3 hours a night, even if that's true, it's not true. But even if that were true, your results are still going to be suboptimal. You're increasing your chance of injury, of course, but you're going to get to a point where, like, the harder you train, the less effective that training is going to be over time, and the worse your results are going to be relative to the intensity of your training. So the benefit curve drops off rapidly if you're not paying attention to nutrition and recovery. So do the runs, ride the bike, but you've got to treat the other two pillars, the other two legs of that stool, as if they're just as important as the training. I don't want to go too deep on nutrition because I'm not an expert. I'm not even qualified to be talking about this. Again, I'm just talking about like what worked for me. But there is some stuff that sort of, it bears covering off. When you're training, you're going to be doing damage to your muscles. It's okay. It's not bad damage. It's the type that then heals and then you are better and faster and more efficient physically from that damage. But your body's going to need stuff to plug back into that hole to patch up that damage. That stuff, the actual material that your body needs to synthesize new muscle tissue and all the other stuff that you're going to need to replace, is in the form of amino acids, which generally speaking we get from proteins. You need to be getting right around a gram of protein per pound of body weight, or close to it. That's really hard to do. That's a lot of protein, and I eat a lot of protein. But you do need to sort of focus on protein and make sure you're getting enough of it before all the ketos jump up and start cheering. Technically, you don't need to eat carbohydrates. Technically, you'll survive in ketosis or whatever, but recovery is much more efficient, much faster, and your training will be much better if you're consuming carbohydrates. If you are going to try to lose body fat, go for it. It's actually relatively easy to do as long as you are restricting the number of calories that you eat relative to your resting basal metabolic rate and the training sessions that you're doing. I'm not going to go too far down this road. The internet's full of it. You can find it. But a calorie counter is a good place to start. They're rarely like perfectly accurate, but they do give you a good sort of starting point so that you're like, all right, I'm going to start with this number and see how I do. If you do start to lose weight, you want to do it in a relatively slow slope. So you want to be aiming for around 1% of your overall body weight per week lost. You don't want to go too fast. If you go too fast, you're almost certainly going to be dropping a lot of muscle in order to do it. This doesn't apply to your first couple of weeks. You're going to drop a lot of water and stuff like that. So it's okay if the first couple of weeks feel really fast. Just remember that you're trying to slow down. So when you do slow down, that's a good thing. You should only be losing about 1% of your body weight per week. And if you focus on protein and get your protein recommendation in first and prioritize that first, it should actually be relatively easy to say no to the other stuff that you really want to eat and probably shouldn't. Like if you've eaten an entire day worth of healthy food, it's easier at least because you're not as hungry at all. You're actually probably kind of full. But it's much easier to say no to an ice cream cone, which I failed to do most of the time. But it does become a little bit easier. But if you're eating too many calories, like a lot of people are thinking like, well, I'm running now, I can get away with this, or I'm swimming every day, I can get away with that. You can eat enough to offset any workout that you can do. And your body's not going to turn to body fat, if it still has fuel, if it has enough fuel in the tank. You know what I mean? You don't draw down your savings account if you have a paycheck coming in. It's important that you keep track of your, even in vague terms, you have to have some idea of the amount of calories that you're eating and then weigh yourself every single day. I highly, highly recommend that you average out the weight. So weigh yourself every day so that you have the data, but the number that you should pay attention to, for me, was a 7-day trailing average. That gave me a better idea of directionally where I was. If I had a big night out, weight's going to shoot up. If I wake up dehydrated for some reason, weight's going to go back down. But no matter how out of whack a single weigh-in was, a 7-day trailing average would kind of keep me directionally going in the right direction. So for me, it is very hard to eat a small prescribed amount of food in a single meal. once I get going, I kind of want to eat a lot. On the other hand, I don't mind being hungry for a couple of hours. It doesn't really bother me. So for me, this is more behavioral than it is physical though. For me, 1 meal a day worked great because it was very hard for me to eat too many calories all in one sitting. But that's me. When I sit down to eat, I like to eat a lot. Now, if I do that 3 times a day, that's going to be a huge problem. If I do it once a day, I can get away with it a little bit. But if you're somebody who doesn't mind having, a cup of rice and, X ounces of protein or whatever, 5 meals a day can work great for you. 6 meals a day could work great for you, especially if you don't like the feeling of being hungry. I don't mind feeling fasted, so 1 meal a day worked just fine for me. But even doing 1 meal a day, the principle was still the same. I would still figure out how much protein I had to eat first, eat that much protein, and then start making decisions about the stuff that I wanted. So if we're having chicken and pasta, I have to eat a lot of chicken before I get to start eating some pasta. And it would limit the amount of stuff that I probably shouldn't be eating because I focused first on the stuff I should be eating. This feels more like you're adding stuff than you are taking things away. So mentally a lot easier for me to kind of come to grips with. I didn't feel like I was being deprived of things. I felt like it was more of a challenge. Eat all of this first and then you can have this. And the result was me eating less of this. I said I wasn't going to go deep on this and now I can't stop talking about it. It's like mental and physical and emotional for a lot of people. Food's hard, food's complicated, but just basic principles are get enough protein and don't eat too many calories. That's important. How you get to that point is going to be extremely subjective, but objectively, if you're eating less calories than you need, your weight will go down. If you're eating more calories than you need, your weight will go up. And if you don't have enough protein, you're going to lose muscle mass, but your body weight's still going to go up. And I don't have to tell you what it's going to be made of. So figure out how much protein you need, get it, figure out roundabouts how many calories you need, and interact with that number, understanding that more means weight gain and less means weight loss. Recovery, my favorite part. Recovery is just as important as training or nutrition. And before I just skip over that phrase, when I say just as important, what I mean is if you don't have a good strategy to recover and you are not recovering sufficiently, do not bother training. This won't work unless you are recovering. Now, there's a lot of different theories and thinking around recovery, active recovery versus passive recovery, and rest days versus training days and stuff like that. I'm gonna skip most of that and just talk about recovery in kind of 2 phases: rest and sleep. Rest is basically just concerned with training frequency. How often are you training? This is going to be extremely subjective, and it's going to rely on a lot of factors. It's age, fitness level, genetics to a certain extent, your weight. It's going to rely on a lot of things. So it's super subjective, and I'm not going to sort of prescribe anything here, obviously. We did already look at the training frequency chart that I did before, but this is why the collection of data is so important, because you need to keep track of how you're feeling and what you've done over the past few days that caused you to feel this way so that you know what your next step or next couple of days should probably look like. Once you get into that groove, it's actually pretty easy to look at the last 7 days and then kind of plan out the next 3 or 4 days based on what you need to do like in life and how much time you have to train and where those trainings should slot in. You get the knack of it pretty quick. I think I got the hang of it like end of month 1, maybe mid month 2. I had already sort of figured out how often I could do certain things and still feel good to go for my next training session without racking up too much CNS fatigue. So it's something that once you understand the concepts, you can sort of start to work out when your rest days should be. When in doubt, though, always throw in some zone 2. If you're not sure if you're too fatigued to train on that day, or if you're not quite sure if a hard 5K or a timed swimming session is in the books for today, don't worry about it. Go out to the shed or the basement or wherever you got your bike, hop on the bike, and get some zone 2 minutes in. After 30 minutes, see how you feel. If you can go 60, go 60. I didn't push it much past 60 on days where I wasn't sure, but if your fitness level is higher, do 3 hours, do whatever you want. What I found was that zone 2 allowed me to get some training in without adding any more peripheral fatigue, as long as I kept it under an hour, without adding any more peripheral fatigue, and the CNS fatigue that it added was pretty minimal. So zone 2 is a really, really good gap filler. If you don't know whether or not you should rest or train, 100% do some zone 2 on the bike. The other sort of phase of recovery is sleep. You could write a whole book about sleep, and people have. I haven't read a single one of them, so you should go read one of those instead of listening to this. There are kind of a few general recommendations, though, that I can give you. Carve out extra time for sleep. So if you want to get 8 hours of sleep in, plan for like 10 hours to be in your bedroom. It takes time to fall asleep, and then for some people it takes time for them to sort of wake up in the morning. So just make sure that you give yourself a buffer. But if you want to sleep for 8 hours, don't plan out 8 hours and 15 minutes and just assume that that's how it's going to go. Give yourself extra time, and if you wake up too early, run outside and get some zone 2 minutes in. It'll be fine. You'll get it dialed in. But give yourself more time than you need when you're first starting out. The environment that you're sleeping in is very, very important, and it's actually relatively straightforward. You want it to be cool, comfortable, relatively quiet, and dark. Now, when I say quiet, it doesn't need to be silent. If you like it to be silent, and get yourself one of those earmuff things or whatever, and they're comfortable, whatever, go for it. Me, I actually preferred to have like a little bit of like low audio. Nothing that was going to pique my interest or attention, but just something to listen to. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it sort of like helps my brain like pop into neutral, sort of. And so, yeah, I would listen to a bunch of stuff, as I mentioned. I'd listen to audiobooks that I've already read. Moby Dick, Don't Sleep on Herman. But a podcast that I really want to recommend is Boring Books for Bedtime. It's incredible. I don't actually know who this person is who runs that podcast, but she's doing the Lord's work. It's amazing. I listened to the first episode, which is a handbook of some South Indian grasses. It's a handbook of some South Indian grasses. I have listened to it over 24 times. I don't think that I've ever finished it. It is 47 minutes long, and I've never made it to the end. It's amazing, and it's incredible. And whoever this woman is, she does not get enough credit for what she does. It's a public service. It should be like a utility or a... No, it should be like a public service. It should be like a public institute. Anyway, not a sponsor, by the way. It's just free advertisement, tubes. A high sugar intake, especially near bedtime, can cause short-term spikes in blood glucose, followed by a crash. This fluctuation can trigger restlessness, elevated heart rate, and difficulty falling asleep. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, delaying the buildup of sleep pressure. Its half-life averages 5 to 7 hours, so even early afternoon coffee can interfere with your ability to fall asleep. Caffeine reduces total sleep time and suppresses deep sleep, slow wave and REM sleep, leading to less restorative rest even if total hours are adequate.
You remind me of old Kilkenny, where the river shone on a glow, when your Irish eyes...
Alcohol initially acts as a sedative, so people often fall asleep faster. However, it severely disrupts later sleep cycles, especially REM, causing shallow, fragmented sleep and early awakenings. It also worsens snoring and sleep apnea. High-fat meals, especially saturated fats, eaten late can delay sleep onset due to slower digestion and possible acid reflux. Although diets rich in unsaturated fats like fish, nuts, and olive oil are linked to more stable sleep patterns and better REM proportions, saturated fats tend to correlate with lighter sleep and more awakenings.
When you are near, I seem to hear the song of yesterday. Sure, you have all the charms of my mother, Macquarie. You're my wild Irish rose. You remind me of old Kilkenny, where the river shone on a glow. When your Irish eyes are smiling, I heaven, you're my Irish song.
One thing that I can tell you is that I did not track my sleep, and I deeply regret it. I really, really regret it. I could have done a better job, I think, if I had tracked my sleep. When you're sleeping, your body is recovering and improving and rebuilding in its most efficient state. This is when it gets most of that work done, and I didn't bother to track it. That was foolish. I absolutely should have been tracking my sleep. You should do the same thing. Don't waste that window. Don't waste that recovery time. Pay attention to the sleep. This is part of the challenge. Treat it as a workout. Give it the priority that it needs. Because when you don't sleep well while you're training, and you do sleep well while you're training, you will feel the difference between the two. And then then it won't matter what I say. It's important enough that you should treat it as a workout and give it that level of priority, because you do not want to waste that recovery window. Go to sleep. All right. Now we'll talk about the gear. All right, everybody, with the training and the gear, If you're not eating right or you're not sleeping, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what kind of bike you have. Whatever, I'll do it. Oh, little bastards are in the gutters. Oh, is this running? Okay, so general gear that you have to get. None of these are event specific. These are just like stuff that you need to get this done. You're gonna need a triathlon suit of some sort. I went with a 2-piece. I hear the 1-piece ones are very efficient and comfortable. I needed a 2-piece because I have like a long torso, and so like any of the 1-piece ones, my shoulders were giving me a wedgie, and it wasn't gonna work for me. So I had to get tri-shorts and a top. They're not super expensive, but you want to spend a little bit of money, mostly on the shorts. The butt pad, the chamois, technical term is the chamois, but the chamois, the pad that keeps that seat on that bike, keeps it from really like chafing the old. That chamois is designed in such a way in a tri-suit that it won't get saturated with water to a point that it's going to slow you down later in the run. Bike shorts, which we'll talk about in a second, do have a thicker pad that you'd never want to swim in. Tri-shorts, different from bike shorts, tri-shorts have a thinner chamois that you wouldn't want to train in for months and months and months because of the issue. But they dry out very, very fast. So that thinner chamois is advantageous on race day, not great for training. Plus, you wouldn't want to wear out your tri-suit. If you're going to be training, 3, 4, 5 times a week over the course of months and months, you're going to burn through tri-suits, and they're far more expensive than just regular bike shorts. So get a tri-suit. You don't have to spend too much money on it, but it's worth getting something that's comfortable, breathable, that you feel like you can move around in. Return it if it doesn't feel good. They won't get mad at you. Get a different size, whatever. Also, you're likely going to size down. So if you usually wear like an XL, you might find yourself shopping for larges. The stuff is supposed to be tight. You really don't want it getting in your way or chafing or anything like that. So don't be embarrassed. Go a little smaller. Make sure the fit's right. Various underwear and socks. You're going to be training a lot, and you're going to be doing a lot of laundry, and you might end up kind of like going through a lot of like, specifically the underwear and the socks get extra gross. You're going to be washing them really, really often, and they might run out on you. But if you find a brand of running socks that you like, or just any socks that you like, and a brand of whatever your underwear situation is, buy a little extra, because you will wear them out. So just budget for some socks and underwear. A scale. This is more if you're looking to lose weight while you're doing this. There's going to be some people who are already at a healthy weight. This is not going to be a consideration for them. Feel free to go ahead and skip it. For me, though, I was too heavy to run like that for such a long period of time on pavement. I was too heavy to be on the bike and go as fast as I wanted to and all that. So I had to drop some weight. If you're going to do that, get a digital scale that will give you your body fat percentage. Look, the body fat percentage is not going to be accurate by any real standard, but it will be directionally accurate. So as long as you're using the same scale and you're using it every day and that percentage is going down, you're headed in the right direction. It's not as good as, calipers or body scans or whatever, but that doesn't matter. This isn't a bodybuilding competition. You just want to know that as you're losing weight, predominantly that weight is body fat rather than muscle mass. That's the real goal. So you just want to make sure that as your weight goes down, that body fat percentage number is also going down at the same time. You're going to want to get a watch. Okay, but it does not need to have GPS. It does not need to check your heart rate. It doesn't need to do any of those things. Now, I used a G-Shock I got a G-Shock like Mudman, which costs as much as one of those very useful fitness watches, but doesn't do any of the fitness watch things. Allegedly, you can shoot it with a 22 and it'll still work, and that's probably why I bought it. Totally unnecessary. The watch that I would recommend would be a Casio F91W that you can get on the internet for like 20 bucks, because all you need, in my opinion, is the stopwatch. You need something that's waterproof, that you can train in, that's comfortable, that has a stopwatch on it. A clear digital stopwatch. That's really all you need. Now listen, if you like the tech stuff, if you like having a heart rate monitor built into your watch, you like having your watch track where you are all the time and tell you how long your runs are, if you want your watch to tell you how hard you tried during a bike ride and you find all that useful, by all means, buy a $300 watch. Hook it up to your Wi-Fi, hook it up to your laptop and your cell phone and your refrigerator and your microwave, and have it track all the data. I love data. Go get your data and use it. Don't feel like you need one though. If you have a comfortable digital watch that has a stopwatch on it, that's going to get you there. So for the budget, I'm calling it 20 bucks. And then maybe my favorite part, data sheets. I used Google Sheets. It is free, but I'm a data nerd. So for me to set up a data sheet that was going to track what I wanted to see and then build tables and charts based on that data was really, really easy to do. If it's easier for you to get some sort of, technology that's designed for fitness, and you like the charts and graphs that thing builds better, and you don't have to do it, and you want to spend a few bucks on it, go out there and get it. As long as you're collecting the data, and then you're looking at the data in a meaningful way, that's all that's really important here. For me, that was free, because I don't mind just building it on my own from scratch in Google Sheets. But if you wanted to get something that was more, maybe it's hooked up to that fancy watch that you bought. Just as long as you are collecting data and you're looking at it in a way that is accurate but also compelling, that'll get you there. So spend however much you want. For me, that was $0. So the gear for the swim started off really basic and then turned into kind of more of a big deal. If you watch the monthly recaps, you'll see when that turn took place. I decided to get a wetsuit. To start, you got to get a pair of goggles. The good news is these are not expensive, and they really only need to do like one thing. They just keep the water off of your eyes so that you can see. That's about it. You just need to be able to see. If they're comfortable and they don't let water in, and you can see through them, nailed it. You can do this for 20 or 30 bucks. This is similar to the tri-suit where I'm going to say, if you put it on and it's not comfortable, maybe adjust it once or twice if you want to see if you can get it there. But if it's not comfortable after your first swim, stop, return it. You don't need it. You don't need to make it work. Try again, try again. This is a situation where you want this to be comfortable and functional. You don't want to be messing around with uncomfortable goggles, and they're not that expensive. So return them, try a different pair. But as long as they keep the water out, you can see through them and they're comfy, nailed it. No reason to spend a lot of money here. Where you will probably spend a lot of money is on a wetsuit. Now, if you are an accomplished swimmer, or if you're doing a triathlon in a warm weather environment where wetsuits might not be allowed, then, skip it. I think for me, it would have made the swim a lot harder. I do want to try one without a wetsuit at some point, now that I'm more comfortable. But the wetsuit was such a game changer for me, I'm going to go ahead and recommend it. I spent a couple $100 on mine. You might be able to do a little bit better if you can find a sale or something like that. But make sure, no matter how much you spend on it, make sure it is a wetsuit for triathlons, because they're designed in a very special way. Wetsuits are made of a material called neoprene. Neoprene is buoyant. Scuba divers use this buoyancy in conjunction with their weight and their the vest that holds all their stuff. It fills up with air. There's little pockets in it that you can let air in and out to. It doesn't matter. Neoprene is buoyant, and a wetsuit for scuba diving is one layer, and they're really just worried about like the cold. So you'd wear like a thinner 3mm for warmer dives, and then like a thicker 5 or 7 for colder dives, because neoprene also insulates you and keeps you warm. Triathlon wetsuits, they don't really care about about the thermal profile of the suit, but what they do care about is that buoyancy. And there's an advantageous way to set up that buoyancy, and that is 3mm neoprene in the top, 5mm neoprene in the bottom. And the effect that this has is that when you float, when you lie in the water, it pulls your legs up to horizontal, which puts you in a better swimming position. I don't know how it's legal because it's such a huge advantage, or it felt to me like a huge advantage, but it floats you into a better swimming position. So get a triathlon wetsuit, wear it, love it. You can wear it scuba diving, I think. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm sure it'll be fine. This is where you might spend a little bit of money though. Mine was brand new at retail, not on sale, from the manufacturer, $200. Came with a warranty, came with really good customer service. They even called me because I couldn't try the suit on to make sure that it was going to fit me right. Like, they called me looking for measurements. So that was actually kind of cool. But it was a huge advantage, and I absolutely recommend getting a wetsuit. There's no way around it. The bike is where you're going to spend some money. Now, when I started this project, I looked into like beginner triathlon bikes, and you're lucky to sneak in under $1,000 American, brand new, for a bike. You could do much better on the used market. The thing is, I don't know enough about bikes to not get hosed on the used market. I don't think that would really happen, but there was just nothing. I didn't know what to check or how to check it such that I could get a bike that was going to get me through. So I wanted to get something new. I ended up buying just a road bike, not a triathlon bike or a time trial bike, nothing that was going to impress anybody. I mean, it looks cool as hell, but it's a very like sort of retro sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it was heavy. The gear shifting wasn't really all that smooth. Actually, I think a little bit too small for me ultimately. But the things that you're looking for is something that's the right size for you, or at least can be adjusted to your body size. The gears should shift pretty smoothly, and you want it to be as light as you can get it. Those are sort of the main things. And then ultimately, you're gonna bring it to a bike shop. If you buy it brand new and it comes in a box, have them assemble it for you. But either way, bring it to a bike shop so they can check it, give it a once over, a tune up, and fit it for you. They'll adjust it so that the seat and everything are in the right spot. This isn't cheap, but it is an important piece of equipment. You're relying on it for a huge part of your triathlon. And the people at the bike shop know what they're doing, where you probably don't. And that has value. You know what I mean? That's worth money. So expect to spend a certain amount of money on the bike itself. I also upgraded to clipless pedals, which have corresponding shoes that have to go with them. Counterintuitively, clipless pedals mean pedals that you actually clip your feet to. Now, a lot of people will just ride with cages, the things that you sort of stick your foot into. I didn't see anybody with just nothing, just like regular pedals. They might be out there, but I didn't see them at my triathlon. I bought clipless shoes that you can kind of run pretty comfortably in. They weren't actually hyper expensive. They weren't cheap either. But clipping your feet into the pedals takes some getting used to. But once you get used to it, you feel the difference. I mean, it feels way, way better than just flopping your feet down on a pair of pedals. You feel this incredible efficiency of energy transfer. Like, you feel like every move you make gets directly translated into the road. So you feel like bolted to the road, and all of your effort is going right into those tires. It's really, really cool. So weirdly, this is kind of a specialty piece of equipment, but weirdly, I'm going to recommend clipless pedals and shoes to go with them with just a quick release tightening system. They're really, really simple. You're also going to need a trainer. Now, this is a situation where you can spend a ton of money, like thousands of dollars if you want to, for a system that has like a big screen where you can play video games on it, and it'll adjust the resistance on the trainer, and it will track how hard you're pedaling, and it will translate that to some kind of a game that you can play, and that looked really, really cool. I didn't do any of that, but it looked really cool at the bike shop. I spent $100 and got a trainer that works pretty well. I can adjust the resistance if I need to, but it's a very basic thing. It's essentially just a bracket that lifts your back wheel up off of the ground securely, lifts your back wheel up off the ground so that you can pedal away as if it were a stationary bike. The way that I used the trainer to get into zone 2, by the way, with no specialty equipment whatsoever, was I set the trainer to a resistance that felt like reasonable. It wasn't hard to pedal, it wasn't too easy, felt relatively reasonable. Then I messed with the gears on the bike, because the gears are going to make it easier or harder to pedal. right? So they're almost like kind of like a resistance fine tuner. Based on how fast you're going, they're going to make it harder or easier to go that fast. So I could set the resistance on the trainer to a certain number, and then by shifting the gears on the bike, I could actually nudge my heart rate up or down based on the high-low gears and then the numbered gears on the bike. So I was able to just essentially remember when I'm in H5, I stay in zone 2 for a very long time. And the way that I got into zone 2 is just to take my pulse and watch my watch and count the heartbeats. You don't have to do this regularly while you're pedaling. You can just set it once and kind of forget it. Once you know what gear you're supposed to be in, you're pretty much good to go. Hop on the bike, get going, get into gear, and stay in that gear for the duration of your session. So that was actually really easy. I did not feel like I needed to spend any more money than I did, and frankly, I probably could have done a little bit better if I had shopped around. Pay attention to the weight limit on the trainer. You do not want that thing to fail. And then I imagine you go rocketing through your garage door at 1,000 miles an hour. So pay attention to the weight limit on the trainer. But as long as that's dialed in and you can adjust the resistance, that's really all you need. No reason to spend $1 million on the trainer. Bike shorts. These things are something else. So I ended up getting bike shorts with a bib. That's basically, it looks like a singlet, like a wrestling singlet. So it's shorts, but it's attached to a pair of kind of like an upper, you know what I mean, like a wrestling singlet. Just to make sure it doesn't fall down while you're riding. That was actually, I got used to that. That was actually all right. I put a t-shirt over it because it's a deeply embarrassing garment, but it is one that is really functional. Now, these differ from triathlon shorts. The chamois, the butt pad in the bike shorts is going to be thicker because bike shorts are just for biking. They have no expectation that you're going to swim in them. Triathlon shorts have the expectation that you need to be able to swim comfortably in it, then hop out of the water and hop onto a bike and not have that thing be completely full of water. So that they are different, but they're more durable, they're tougher. The bike shorts are more durable, they're tougher, they'll stand up to your training a lot better than a pair of triathlon shorts, which you might wear out. And the triathlon shorts I found to be actually a little bit more expensive. So just factor in the fact that you're going to want to get a pair of bike shorts and you're going to want to wear them every single time that you hit the bike. Your most important piece of clothing on a bicycle is going to be your helmet. This is a spot where I spent a surprising amount of money because I was just picturing one of those styrofoam brain buckets from Walmart, and that is not the case. When you go to the bike shop, they will have extremely lightweight, extremely comfortable, and extremely safe helmets that you can buy. They're not as cheap as a styrofoam brain bucket from Walmart, but they are way more comfortable and they're worth it. You want to make sure that they're certified. I don't remember the name of the certification, but you want to make sure that they have that certification on them. The bike shop is not going to sell you a bad helmet. They'll help you size it. Expect to spend a little bit of extra money on the helmet, and trust me when I say it's definitely worth it. Glasses. I bought like the cyclist sort of like sunglasses. They're actually really cool, super comfortable, and they don't fog up while you're riding. Mine came with 3 different lenses. So you pop the lenses out and pop different lenses in with 3 different levels of sort of light blocking. So there's one that's like totally clear, one that's red, and then one that's like dark for like really bright, like riding in the desert or something. These are worth it. The anti-glare thing that they bring to the party is it was absolutely worth it. You do not want to be doing 35 miles an hour on a bike and then get sunblind all of a sudden and you can't see. Definitely don't want that. They're also great at like rocks and bugs and dust. A lot of stuff hits you at a relatively high speed when you're going that fast, like downhill, and you're not paying attention and someone kicks up a piece of gravel. These things are great. So it looks and feels like kind of like an extra, but I'd put these up there, not as important as the helmet, obviously, but I'd put them up there with something that I would absolutely recommend that you get your hands on. They don't necessarily need to be made for cycling specifically. Mine were, and I feel like that helped a lot. I felt like they were optimized for what I was trying to do. They also weren't wildly expensive. Obviously, you can spend hundreds of dollars on a pair of sunglasses if you want to. I think mine were like $80, and they came with 3 different types of lenses, and I wore them every single time I rode. They were great. So weirdly, that's the thing that I'm absolutely gonna recommend. In a slightly more boring turn, you're gonna need to buy a bike pump, and the bike pumps at the bike shop are much better than the ones that you use to blow up a soccer ball every spring. They have a gauge on them that will tell you the pressure inside the tire. The tire will say what pressure is optimal for that tire. It's important that you spend a little bit of money on the bike pump. It's worth it. They're super high quality and they last for an extremely long time. So it is worth it to spend a few bucks on the bike pump, and you're gonna have to. You're also gonna wanna get a replacement tube for your tire and a repair kit. This one snuck up on me. You gotta get a repair kit. That's worth it, because it didn't happen to me and I didn't actually see anybody else that it happened to. But if you did all this training and got so ready for this event and then you couldn't finish because you blew a tire and you had no way to fix it, that's just stupid. So it's worth it to spend a few extra bucks, get an extra tube for your tire, and get a repair kit. It all sort of like velcros to the bike and sits there, doesn't weigh very much, and it's worth it. They also come with little CO2 tanks, I think, to just reinflate the tire. Again, I didn't have to do it. There's a part of me that kind of wishes that I had to do it, but just to try it. But I never learned how to use it. Anyway, it's worth it, just for the peace of mind, if nothing else, to have the repair kit, Velcro it to your bike, and then hopefully never think about it again. The gear for the run is relatively straightforward. Shoes. Get a pair of comfortable shoes that you can run in. I got pretty lucky. My first pair of running shoes that I tried on were great. They are going to get a little bit more comfortable as you run in them. So they don't need to feel like, slippers right out of the box necessarily. Now, if they're uncomfortable or they're causing you any sort of pain, return them. Obviously, you should be going to a store and trying them on, ideally, while you're, before you buy them. But as long as they're comfortable and they're relatively lightweight and they don't hurt your feet, if you feel good after running, 5 miles in a row, and your feet aren't like screaming at you, they're probably fine. I spent about $120 on a pair of shoes, ran with them for 6 months, and I am still running in them. So they can last for a while. Once you put a few hundred miles on them, they start to wear out. You want to watch out for that. But for the most part, yeah, you can get away with one pair of shoes. Do not buy a new pair of shoes for race day. If you train in a pair of shoes for 6 months, don't buy a new pair of shoes the day before and expect it's going to work out. They still need to be broken in. So if you're getting close and you feel like you need to buy a new pair of shoes, 4 to 6 weeks out, minimum 4 to 6 weeks out from race day, and train in the new shoes all the time, because you've got to get them broken in before you're ready to go. The run is the last thing that you do. So you're going to be taking your foot out of the water, putting it into bike shoes, taking them out of the bike shoes, and then putting them into running shoes, and then running a 5K in them. So you want to make sure that those shoes are comfortable before you hit the ground on race day. But shoes are very important, but you don't need to spend a ton of money on them. Clothes, running clothes. I started out just running in like whatever I had hanging around. I did end up buying a pair of running shorts, which have like tight shorts underneath and then like less embarrassing shorts over the top. That was actually helpful. The t-shirt, whatever, I ran in any t-shirt, it didn't really matter. But the running shorts were important. Highly recommend spending a few bucks on those. And then just a couple of t-shirts. Like I said, you're going to run through a lot of clothes doing this, so ratty old t-shirts, totally fine. Shorts, maybe spend $1 or $2. Earbuds. You're going to want to buy, if you're like me. Now listen, if you want to go out in nature and just listen to the sounds of birds and, traffic or whatever you're hearing while you're running, go get it. For me, I had to be listening to music. If I wasn't running with someone else, I had to be like listening to music or a podcast or something while I was running, just to keep my mind in it and out of it at the same time. These just need to be comfortable, such that they don't fall out when you move your head. And they charge up and hold the charge for as long as you need them to. That's about it. I actually was buying really cheap ones, and then as a gift I got a really nice pair, and I was really hoping that they'd be exactly the same as the cheap pair. Not the case. So I'm going to pop it in at like $80 or so, because that's where you get into like really high quality stuff. But if you find a pair, like a $20 pair of earbuds that are comfortable for you and don't fall out, perfect. Go get it. Use those. But something so you can listen to music is going to be good. This also brings me to the bonus item for the run, which is a fanny pack. I bought a fanny pack because I couldn't find a way to hold my phone while I was running that didn't result in my shorts being pulled down. I've seen people run with the armbands that they slide their phone into. That's fine. I actually found the fanny pack, and the fanny pack's like designed for running. They're like a little extra tight. They're a little extra slim. I found it was kind of a weird game changer. But it was like $20. It's nothing fancy. It just held literally just my phone. Everything else stayed home. So yeah, that was worth it for me. Skip it if you feel like it, but I recommend a fanny pack. Never thought I'd say the phrase, I recommend a fanny pack, but here we are. So just a couple of little extras here. Nothing really that you need to buy necessarily, but some things to keep in mind as you train. I said this in a couple of the recap videos, and I'm going to say it again now. Track data. Everything that you can track in a repeatable, consistent way. So if you're tracking times, for instance, make sure it's the same distance and the same route every time, or else that's going to affect the data that you put in there. If you're tracking your weight, make sure you're using the same scale and you're weighing yourself at the same time every day. You want to make that data as consistent as you can. And at the beginning, just collect it. Just collect the data. Even if you don't know how you're going to use it, just collect it. You'll be able to go back later and build graphs and tables from that data, and then see what you can find from it. See what relationships you can find between those data sets. Sometimes that'll jump out at you as you're just looking at the data itself, or maybe you'll have an idea that if I do more of this, I should be losing weight, or if I do more of that, I should be getting faster. You can test those ideas by looking at the data. And then sometimes you'll just build a chart because you're bored and you're a nerd. But sometimes you'll just be looking at a chart of your data and think to yourself, well, that's interesting. I wonder if that's related to this. And you bring another piece of data into the chart and it turns out there is or there isn't some relationship there. Anyway, the process of collecting that data and then visualizing it and looking at it can help you to change or form your strategy and what you should be doing more of or less of. It can help to alter your behavior. As long as you're collecting the data in a consistent way and the data is accurate and you're looking at it visually in a way that's compelling and also representative of reality, it can be extremely motivating and it can really help to inform your strategy. For me, it keeps me consistent, it keeps me compliant to the program, it keeps me excited about weighing in the next day rather than dreading it because I get to add to that data set and see what the impact of my actions are. Anyway, I'm going on and on about it like I always do because I'm a big data nerd, but collect the data in such a way that you're going to be able to see that progress over time. Because if you're getting better, you're winning. If your times are getting better, and if you're trying to lose weight, your weight's going in the right direction, that you know for a fact that you're making progress. You know for a fact that you're doing better and better. There's an old cliche in endurance sports. It's you against you. You're competing against yourself. That's not actually the whole picture. You're not competing against yourself really, because myself is the one who's running. I'm not competing against myself. I'm trying to get myself to continue running and running faster. The you that you're competing against is you from a week ago, a month ago, 3 months ago. You're competing against that person, the person that you were, 3 months ago, and you're not going to be able to. The only thing that represents that opponent is the data that you collected. If you didn't collect the data, you're not going to be able to compete against that person. You're not going to be able to compete against that opponent, and you need that opponent. You need to, in order to be getting better, you need to have someone to beat, and the person you're trying to beat is you a month ago. So in order to make sure that opponent shows up so that you can compete against them, so that you can get better, is to make sure that you're tracking that data. If you have a bad run, great. It means 2 weeks from now, it'll be easy for you to win that race. But you need to be collecting it in order to see that progress move forward. So don't let the process of collecting the data be discouraging in any way. It's going to be encouraging a week from now. You're going to want to have that data. And you're going to regret it if you don't have it. Even if the data makes you feel bad in the moment, collect it. Collect all the data that you can think of that's going to be helpful to you. And then you'll figure out what the benefit of that data is down the line. But once the data's gone and you haven't collected it, it's gone. I mean, I think I got that point across. There's no way I could possibly babble more and more about that. So over the course of this 6 months, I lost 25 pounds, most of which I think was weight that I should be losing, meaning it was fat, body fat. Originally, I was going to make this kind of a big part of the project, the weight loss a big part of the project, because it was going to be important for me. I wanted to, drop some weight, and as I started losing weight, I noticed how much better, not really easier, but how much better my training became. My joints stopped hurting. I could run for longer distances, and my knees didn't hurt. My hips didn't hurt. Like I could run for longer. It became more fun to ride the bike. It became more fun to go for a run. I felt like when you're a kid and you like running around, I started to feel that way again at 42. And it all started to happen as I started to drop weight. And dropping weight does give you this momentum. I mean, it hits every single part. You're less fatigued, your training is higher quality, you can do more of it, both of which contribute to losing more weight. And so the whole thing, you're kind of starting a fire, and it's a really, really good feeling. But if you don't have any weight to lose and you're just trying to get into better, cardiovascular shape, just go for it. You can skip this entire part of the process. You don't have to worry about it. But if you are somebody who thinks that you're too heavy to do this, and I think most of us probably are a little heavier than we'd want to be doing a triathlon, just trust me when I say that as your weight starts to tick down, everything else improves. But don't try to go too fast. You're just targeting around 1% of your body weight per week, and for some people it'll be even slower than that, which is a good thing. You want to be losing weight as slowly as you can to still hit your target on race day, whatever that target might be, because that way you're sure that you're losing the right kind of weight. But if you want to get your car fixed, but yeah, if you have some extra weight to lose, think of it as an advantage, because everything will get easier as you start to drop that weight. Like, what kind of a sicko is a healthy body weight with nothing to train for? What kind of sociopath is like eating healthy without absolutely having to? The last sort of pro tip, the last sort of like bonus item that I found to be a huge force multiplier in training for my first triathlon is my friend Greg. Here comes Greg. Greg did not want to do this when I first brought it up to him. I had to, cajole might be a strong word, but I had to kind of sort of nudge him into even starting this project in the first place. Once he agreed to do it, Greg was all in. Over the course of 6 months, I think Greg might have missed one workout. And he had a medical situation. He had a reason that he couldn't go over the course of 6 months. This is a guy who was reluctant to start and then dialed in, dug in. Days he didn't want to do it. And that was a lot of days he didn't want to do it. And he showed up anyway. And he showed up on time, and he showed up ready to go. It's hard to quantify how much that helped to keep me on pace. On any given day, one of us might not want to do it. One of us might not want to get up at 6 a.m. to go for a run, or get up at 5 a.m. to go for a bike ride or to do a brick, or might not want to get in that pond when neither of us were very good swimmers, and we got to just jump in this pond, first thing in the morning when it's really cold and very sort of lake monstery outside. But even if one of us didn't want to do it, we knew that the other one was going to show up. So in order for us to punk out on a workout, both of us would have to bail. And each of us felt like we sort of owed the other one this training session. Like, I'm not going to not show up and then have Greg be out there by himself. Like, that's ridiculous. Even though I don't feel like doing it, he's going to be there, and I can't let him down. And I know there were a lot of situations where Greg felt the same way. And as much time as I've spent in this project sort of documenting how this was for me and all the stuff that I did and went through, Greg did every single thing that I did. He was there every single step of the way, every workout, every failure, every achievement, every single thing that we did. And he was there on race day. And he ran across the finish line just like I did. So this is as much about the people that you train with, in my case Greg, as it is about me. And that was a huge, I'm not even going to say benefit. That was a linchpin of this process. Because as sure as I am that Greg never would have started this project without me, I'm just as confident that I wouldn't have finished it without him. And that's actually really in line with the point of this whole project. Actually, the whole channel. The whole point of all of this isn't really to instruct or to teach. There's vast amounts of information on the internet delivered by wildly more qualified people as to how you should do each thing, how you should design a training program, and how you should eat, and all that other stuff. Like, all that stuff is, the information's out there, and it's delivered by people who have studied this and dedicated years of their lives to learning more and more about it. Those are the people you should listen to. That is the research that you should do. You should go for the working parts. You should go find someone who knows what they're talking about. The one on the right goes from 1 at the bottom to 7 at the top. So as you're clicking up, it's getting harder. The one on the left is on top and H is on the bottom. It gets harder as you shift down. So instead of thinking to myself,
shifting up and into high, I was thinking literally just direct, like instead of thinking low and high and the numbers get higher, I was literally just like a chimp thinking this goes up, this goes up, this goes down, this goes down. But they do opposite things. Doing that. I don't think anybody's going to find that helpful.
But the idea behind this is to show you the scary first steps that actually aren't all that scary. Somebody who has no idea what they're doing and has never done it before, and then watch them do it. Watch them succeed and fail. Me. Watch me succeed and fail. Because over the course of 6 months, I went from somebody who could not run a 5K to someone who completed a triathlon. And you could do the same thing. And you should. Because it's worth it. It's easier to wrap your arms around a concept or picture yourself doing it if you've seen someone else do it. If that person is an expert, you can sort of separate from them a little bit. Like, well, yeah, of course he can do that because he's like a triathlete, or he's been in shape since he was in high school, or, whatever. But if it's somebody who's, relatively similar in experience and relatively similar in ability, which in my case is, it makes it more likely that you can hop over that first really scary hurdle and just go and do it. I had 25 extra pounds and I needed to buy a bike for sure. I mean, there were steps in there that needed to be taken, but the main thing that was keeping me from doing it, outside of not really thinking that I ever wanted to do this before, the only thing that was ever really meaningfully preventing me from doing something like this was the idea in my head that I couldn't, that there was like other people do that. Someone else does that. Why not me? Why not you? There's nothing stopping you. There's no reason that you can't do the stuff that you want to do. And it seemed to me that it might be helpful to watch somebody else do it. So that's what I've been doing with the last 6 months of my life. So, get on it. That is genuine.